Open with me to the book of Numbers. Numbers chapter 12. Numbers chapter 12. One of the things you realize when you read some parts of the Old Testament is the anger and the frustration and the fury of God. The real fury of God is only seen and felt in the Old Testament. Numbers 12, from verses 1 onwards, and probably till the end of that chapter. It says probably 16 verses. And this morning I want to talk about speaking against God's elect. I remember a few times we've spoken about this, and we've discussed this, and we've gone through this. But this chapter is such a huge eye-opener to all of us, especially when we judge, condemn, talk about, backbite, or pass comments, knowingly or unknowingly, doesn't matter. And this chapter actually talks about how we need to be careful. So speaking against God's elect, Numbers chapter 12 from verses 1. Now basically this is talking about the complaints of Miriam and Aaron. Now Miriam and Aaron are the brother and sister of Moses, and God was using them to take the Israelites out of Egypt and finally into the promised land. So chapter 12 verses 1, it says, while they were at Hazeroth, Miriam and Aaron criticized Moses because he had married a Cushite woman. They said, has the Lord spoken only through Moses? Hasn't he spoken through us too? But the Lord heard them. Now Moses was very humble, more humble than any other person on earth. So immediately the Lord called to Moses, Aaron, and Miriam and said, go out to the tabernacle, all three of you. So the three of them went to the tabernacle. Then the Lord descended in the pillar of cloud and stood at the entrance of the tabernacle. Aaron and Miriam he called, and they stepped forward. And the Lord said to them, now listen to what I say. If there were prophets among you, I, the Lord, would reveal myself in visions. I would speak to them in dreams, but not with my servant Moses. Of all my house, he is the one I trust. I speak to him face to face, clearly, and not in riddles. He sees the Lord as he is. So why were you not afraid to criticize my servant Moses? The Lord was very angry with them, and he departed. As the cloud moved from above the tabernacle, there stood Miriam, her skin as white as snow from leprosy. When Aaron saw what had happened to her, he cried out to Moses, "O my master, please don't punish us for this sin we have so foolishly committed. Don't let her be like a stillborn baby, already decayed at birth." So Moses cried out to the Lord, "O God, I beg you, please heal her." But the Lord said to Moses, "If her father had done nothing more than spit in her face, wouldn't she be defiled for 7 days? So keep her outside the camp for 7 days, and after that she may be accepted back." So Miriam was kept outside the camp for 7 days, and the people waited until she was brought back before they traveled again. Then they left Hazeroth and camped in the wilderness of Paran. Wow, isn't that something? Now, you see, the interesting part of these Old Testament verses is that God loved his people so much, but he also hated sin and hated wickedness. So much so that Moses, who was taking care of the Israelites for 40 years, took all the burden and the pain and the risk and the blame and everything, could not see the promised land because just of only one small mistake and disobedience. One. And that was not even a huge, big deal, at least for us. But it was a big deal for the Lord. And look what it says here. It says, while they were at Hazeroth, Miriam and Aaron criticized Moses because he had married a Cushite woman. Now, I don't know whether it's true that they criticized him because he married that Egyptian lady. No, it was not Egyptian, it was a Philistine, the Cushite. Which Bible college? Cushite woman. Which tribe was she from? Was which nation? Another translation had said, if I'm not making a mistake, Philistine, whatever. But anyway, so she was not an Israelite, basically. She was from another non-Israeli community. And so Moses, for whatever reason, he married her. Now it says that they were criticizing her and him because of that. I really don't think it was because of that married part. In another translation and some commentaries, they say something beyond. But I felt it was more jealousy. I felt it was more frustration, because clearly, just listen to this. It says, Miriam and Aaron criticized Moses because he had married a Cushite woman. They said, look at verse 2, which tells me a little differently. They said, has the Lord spoken only through Moses? So what are we gathering here? It's not because, why should somebody, get angry first because somebody married somebody? That's none of anybody's business. But basically, clearly, Aaron and Miriam were watching how God favored Moses a lot. Moses was God's very close friend. I don't think that I've seen anywhere in the Bible, correct me if I'm wrong, I can be wrong, but I don't think, apart from King David, who the Lord said he's after my own heart, apart from that situation and scenario, I don't think anywhere in the Bible we have read or heard God saying that he is the only man who saw me face to face. Did you know no one has seen God? The point is, no one can see God. Because you go close to him, you'll die. And in fact, at some point of time, the Israelites told Moses, please don't allow God to speak to us because we can't bear the intensity of his presence. They had actually told Moses, if you want to speak to him, please go separately, far away, speak to him and come and tell us what he's saying. Because at one point of time, God came close to them to speak, and it was very intense. They got scared. So the people know the might and the power of God. And so if Moses was there face to face with God, and God saying that he's the only guy who saw me face to face, imagine the certificate that Moses got from God. And that's why the Lord was so angry, and he called Aaron and Miriam and asked them these questions. And said, has the Lord only spoken to Moses? Hasn't he spoken to us too? But the Lord heard them. Now, when we get into these modes of frustration, jealousy, irritation, anger, bitterness, whatever it is, the point I want to make this morning is, God hears you. Even if you don't verbalize it, even if you think it in your heart, especially if it is to some child of God, woman of God, man of God, whoever the person is. And if you're having this jealousy, hatred, anger, frustration, questioning, whatever it is, and if it is not intentionally right, the Bible says God hears your inside or your vocabulary. And that's what it says. God heard their attitude. I would call this attitude. God heard their attitude. It says, but the Lord heard them. Now Moses was very humble, more humble than any other person on earth. So immediately the Lord called to Moses, Aaron, and Miriam and said, go out to the tabernacle, all the three of you. So the three of them went to the tabernacle. Then the Lord descended in the pillar of cloud and stood at the entrance of the tabernacle. God was really mad. He was really mad. The Lord came there. Aaron and Miriam, he called. And they stepped forward. And the Lord said to them, now listen to me. Listen to what I say. If a leader calls you and says, come here, listen to what I say, you get the point. That's not an ordinary calling, right? You're in for trouble. You're in deep trouble. Imagine God standing, coming there and saying, Aaron and Miriam, come here. So step forward. And then he goes and says, now you listen to me. Sometimes I like to become dramatic. When you become dramatic, you get the real sense of really what the picture is. He says, you better listen to me. I've got something I want to say to you and ask you. And he continues. If there were prophets among you, when it says if there were prophets among you, it tells me there were not many prophets there. Right? If there were prophets means there were not too many, there were just a few. And he says, if there were prophets among you, I, the Lord, would reveal myself in visions. Now note the first statement. He says, if there were prophets, if there were, I would still not speak to them face to face. I would reveal myself first in visions. And he says, second, I would speak to them in dreams. First of all, there's not many, but if there were, I would probably communicate to them in visions and in dreams. Okay? In visions, I would speak to them in dreams. Verse 7. But not with my servant Moses. So what is God saying here? He's saying, look, Aaron and Miriam, I just want to make something very clear to you. Moses, my servant, is so close to me. He's so dear to me. I have not revealed myself to him in visions and dreams. Not so with my servant Moses. It says, but not with my servant Moses. Of all my house, he's the only one I trust. I speak to him face to face clearly. So basically, God is looking at Miriam and Aaron and telling them, I don't treat my prophet Moses the way I would treat anybody else if there were prophets. And my communication to them would have been visions and dreams. But not so with my servant Moses. I speak to him face to face. I like the word clearly, and I like the next word, not in riddles. Anybody has another translation here for that 7th verse? I was very curious to see if there's anything else apart from this version. 7, just if you have another version, just can you read 7? Anybody, quickly.
But this is not true of my servant Moses, who spake with all the land. With him I speak face to face.
Face to face. Okay, anybody else? I'm trying to get an alternative word for clearly and riddles. It says here, I speak to him face to face. I like that. Clearly and not in riddles. And he goes and says, he sees the Lord as he is. I want to emphasize this because that's the most powerful words I've ever seen in the Bible and read so far. God is trying to make a point very clear here. And did you know who Miriam and Aaron were, first of all? They were not ordinary people. They were prophets themselves. Miriam and Aaron were prophet and prophetess. They were prophets. They were highly respected people. He's looking at 2 senior prophets and talking about another prophet and telling them how he distinguishes this prophet from both of you and anybody else who ever was there. Imagine the place Moses had in the sight of God. God certifying him and warning these 2 prophets about what he thinks about Moses and how he relates with Moses. I was getting the shivers when I was reading that. It was literally going up my spine. And he says, not so with Moses. I speak to him face to face, clearly and not in riddles. He sees the Lord as he is. Now here's the real icing. He goes on to ask, so why were you not afraid? First question, Miriam and Aaron, why were you first of all not even afraid to speak about it? Point number 1. Point number 2, to criticize my servant Moses. You know, when I read that, I was asking the Lord, can there be a moment in our lives where you would look at us and speak to us like that? Put yourself for a few seconds. I want you to put yourself in the place of Moses, okay? Standing there, listening to the Lord Almighty, his brother and sister next to him. Imagine the embarrassment, the confusion, the anxiety that he would have been going through, and the pleasure of listening to his Creator, certifying him, talking on his behalf, protecting him, and actually accusing his two prophets about him. Moses would not have even been bothered about entering the promised land. He's already entered it. If God speaks on your behalf to someone, you don't need no blessing. You're blessed. You don't need to enter into any promised land to feel nice. You're already in the promised land. That's the kind of certification Moses received. That's a serious question by the Lord. Verse 9, the Lord was very angry with them and he departed. There are not too many times where God gets angry and leaves. There's not too many times where God gets angry and leaves. It says the Lord was very angry with them and he just departed. As the cloud moved from above the tabernacle, there stood Miriam, her skin as white as snow from leprosy. In my opinion, Miriam should have actually been killed, because the Lord did that many times to people. Miriam and Aaron should have actually been slain by the Lord. He did that. Thousands of people have died because they criticized, murmured, and were ungrateful to God. Thousands of Israelites, they died during the whole time. And one of the reasons why God took them 40 years instead of 11 days, it says to the promised land, from Egypt to the promised land, crossing the Jordan, is only 11 days by walk, by foot. It took 40 years. And one of the reasons, and probably the main reason why God took them round and round and round, the Bible mentions it, is because he wanted to kill all those people, men and women and children, who were murmuring and talking and complaining. He wanted to wipe out that entire race and generation and wait for a new generation to come up that doesn't have that attitude and take that new generation into the promised land. Imagine how furious, frustrated, and angry was God. And you know how he did that whole 40 years scuffing? You know, he created blocks, because every time they had to pass by a territory of tribes, they wouldn't allow them to pass by. They would say, no, you can't pass. So they were actually fighting their way through, and instead of going through a shortcut, that 11-day shortcut, the Lord actually derouted them, taking them totally a roundabout route. Actually, what the Lord was doing was hardening the hearts of those different tribes so that they won't allow them to pass by, and taking them through another route. Because of the murmuring and because of the frustration of the Israelites, God was actually extending the 11-day period to years and years, and for 40 years. And God's intention was, I want to just kill everybody, and I want a new generation to enter the promised land. Now the reason why we need to learn from these things is, ask ourselves a question. Are we satisfied, grateful? Are we respectful? Are we concerned? Are we in awe of God? Are we thankful to what God has given us, put before us, doing with us, and wanting to bless us with? Are we actually even mindful of these things? That's really what I want to be asking us all this morning. These are great lessons that we learn from the Bible. And it says, she got this leprosy. When Aaron saw what had happened to her, he cried out to Moses, "Oh, my master, please don't punish us for the sin we have so foolishly committed." He realized. Thank God Aaron realized. And he goes on to say, sorry for this foolish mistake and sin that we have done. You know, many times in our lives, when we do something wrong, we try to justify, we try to cover up, we try to say, no, I did this because of this. I've realized in my life that when you do something wrong, just go to God faster than anybody else can go to God and say, I messed up, I goofed up, I'm sorry. That's the easiest, the simplest, the best, and the most effective, and you will be blessed. But if you prolong and you say, no, God, actually, you know, the reason why I'm doing these things is because of this situation and that situation, and I'm frustrated here, and because... I've learned that there's no excuse when you do something wrong. Just say it's wrong. Just say it's wrong. What's the big deal to just say, I'm sorry, I'm wrong? That's what God wants us to be able to understand. When you're wrong, you're wrong. Did you know that nobody wants to know why you were wrong? Did you know that? I realized that actually very lately. We're so happy to explain to people, you know, actually why I did that was... People are so kind and polite that they're not telling you shut your mouth. They're just hearing you for the sake of hearing you. What are people going to do listening to your explanation of why you were wrong? As if it's going to make them feel any better. So when you do something wrong, my suggestion, don't explain to them why that's wrong and how that's wrong. Just say, I'm sorry, I won't do this again. Forgive me. That's short, sweet, effective, blessed, and life moves on. The same thing goes with God, the same thing goes with people. And Aaron realized that. He said, I'm sorry, Master, please, for this foolish sin that we have done. Don't let her be like a stillborn baby, already decayed at birth. So Moses cried out to the Lord, oh God, I beg you, please heal her. Moses is such a loving guy. He's never stopped crying to the Lord for his people. The people who curse him, he cries out to the Lord and says, please don't kill them. Now, as we read these stories, and especially in the life of Moses, one thing that we need to understand, Moses never ran to God and said, I want to do ministry. Like many of us. We see someone doing ministry and say, I also want to be pastor. I also want to be singer. I also want to be evangelist. Like that guy. Moses never ran at the back of ministry, nor did he go at the back of God and say, use me for your kingdom. He never said that. The poor guy was somewhere in the field, minding his own business, and God ran at the back of him. So when someone complains against a person who didn't want the job or responsibility, never intended to do what he's doing, in fact told God many times, leave me alone. Why are you torturing me with this? I can't do this. Many times he asked God to relieve him. God said no. God gave him another alternative. Call Aaron. Aaron will talk for you. The Bible says Moses was, in modern terminology, was a stammer mouth. He stammered and stuttered, right? And he was so scared and embarrassed to even go to Pharaoh. And God said, I'm not bothered about your condition outside and your vocabulary outside. I'm bothered about your condition of your heart. You're the man that I want. You will do what I tell you to do, and you will obey me and you will love me. And so that's why God was at the back of Moses. So when these people complain about a man like that, what's going on in their heart and mind? Isn't it arrogance? Isn't it really an attitude issue? And that's the reason God was so mad with them. That's the reason why God was so frustrated with them. And so Moses said, oh God, I beg you, please heal her. But the Lord said to Moses, if her father had done nothing more than spit in her face, wouldn't she be defiled for 7 days? God is replying to Moses. In other words, God saying, Moses, I think you should not interfere in my affairs. Just go about your work. I know what I'm doing. But he was a little bit more respectful to Moses. He said, let's try to give a kind of an illustration to Moses. If this happened to her, wouldn't she be defiled for 7 days? So keep her outside the camp for 7 days. And after that, she may be accepted back. Imagine a prophetess being kept outside the camp for 7 days and everybody getting to know about this. How embarrassing of a situation for her for Moses, for Aaron, and for the entire group. How embarrassing. But what's the other alternative? What's the other options? That was the God who was actually in function in his fury and in his frustration. Verse 15 says, so Miriam was kept outside the camp for 7 days, and the people waited until she was brought back before they traveled again. Here's the biggest frustration when you disobey and sin and criticize and go against the Lord. You're being a hindrance to everybody else. The whole camp of 6 lakh people, 6 lakh people had to wait for 7 extra days for this prophetess Miriam's punishment to be completed before they went to Paran. Now you see how the 40 years was accumulated, right? Stubbornness, arrogance, murmuring, disobedience. More and more days, weeks, months, years. What could have taken 11 days, that's why it took 40 years. So when we disobey God, it's not just we are involved in this. Please understand, there are lots of other people going to be involved in this, with or without your knowledge. You will be answerable to yourself and to the many others who are actually going through frustration because of some stupid, silly thing that we have done. And that's what happened exactly in this situation. It says, the people waited until she was brought back before they traveled again. Then they left Hazeroth and camped in the wilderness of Paran. There are lots of lessons that we could learn from these stories and illustrations and these events. Lots. If we start deciphering and breaking up word by word, statement by statement, sentence by sentence, we probably get 50 to 100 different meanings and God speaking to us. But this morning I just want to help us understand that we should ask God, where do we stand, Lord, in our understanding of who you are as a God from the beginning? And who you are as a God right now. And the third question is there a difference from the beginning and now with who you are in your character and your nature with us, in your tolerance, in your love, in your acceptance, in your forgiveness? Are you the same God, or have you changed and have you mellowed down? And without wasting much time, you'll get the answer immediately. We were a couple of days back, we were discussing, Clara, James, and all of us, we were discussing if the Old Testament was still the Old Testament now, there probably would have been 10 people living in the world. 10, even 10 might be a lot of numbers. Because God, he was so frustrated, he just started killing people, wiping them out. If a God of love, mercy, justice, and fury and anger from that place has come down to us, to our level right now, who has compromised and who has repented? Is it we or is it God? In my opinion, I really don't think that we have actually repented. It's more God repented. He's brought all of those things down to our level, coming down to our level, showing more love and mercy, more grace, more. What for? What for? So that we continue the way we do things and live life? No. So that we change our attitude, change our behavior, change our perspective, change our thought process, change our understanding and our faith of who He is. And so let's just revamp, asking ourselves, are we really taking God for granted? Are we taking God for granted literally? Or do we really understand who He is in our lives? For this last many days and weeks, I've been trying to figure out, if I were living in the Old Testament times, part of the group of the Israelites, what would have I done? what would have I done? How would have I reacted? It's not a joke. It's not a joke. Today, none of us go through what the Israelites went through. None of us go through it. Trust me, with all our problems, none of us go through what the Israelites went through. None of us. I'm very sure about it. And with all of that comfort and mercy and kindness and forgiveness that we're enjoying right now, we still have a problem. Sometimes we still have a problem. Then we say, oh God. If the Israelites were in our place living right now, they would have been partying every day because they would have known the difference of then and now. But we don't know the value of then and now because we were not there then. We're only here now. And so let's connect with this great Jehovah and try to patch up those areas where we were, not grateful, not thankful, where we were murmuring in our own way, murmuring and getting frustrated, getting angry. We don't have any reason to get angry with God. We don't have any reason. In fact, God has stopped getting angry with us. Completely stopped getting angry with us. And so let's be grateful, thankful, appreciative, and loving and respectful towards God and to people. You see, our relationship with people only flows out of a relationship with God. If you're treating people disrespectfully and cruelly, it's basically you're doing the same with God without your knowledge. So if you find yourself being unkind and cruel and not godly with people, it means you don't have an understanding of who God is to you and you've not understood that relationship. So let's just patch up and repair those areas and get moving with our lives and say, God, we really want to be what you want us to be. And thank you for all of this that you've done for us. That's what's there.